Sally Fox is a pioneer. Yarn has been named after her in this vein. She has been classically breeding cotton for, I believe it's 3 decades.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. In the 1980s and 90s, I was the first organic cotton farmer, and I helped start the whole conversation about organic.
And here is this finally some color in cotton, but what a lousy fiber. It was really rough, and it was short, and it was hard to spin, and I was a good spinner.
Sally Fox was an entomologist working for a cotton breeder when she caught her first glimpse of colored cotton.
I just looked at this and said, wow, what's going on here? Why isn't anyone improving this fiber so it could be more easily spun? And he said, well, there's no market for it. And I said, well, why isn't anyone making a market for it? And he handed me this sack of seeds and said, well, why don't you do it?
I worked my way through college teaching hand spinning. One of my favorite students, she had a daughter, her brain had been destroyed by handling dyes. She was a high school textile teacher and she hadn't worn gloves. The metals migrated to her brain and she was essentially brain dead. I was already a fanatic against pesticides, and so I opened these books to find out who makes dyes, and turns out they're the same companies. So, okay, I'm never gonna use dyes. I'm just gonna use natural colors of natural fibers.
Every time you're dyeing something, you're bleaching the fiber first and then you're dyeing it. And no matter how many improvements you can make, if you can grow the color, why ever dye that color? Dye colors you can't grow. So this gift allowed me to pay for the first spinning of the cotton at a research mill. And it was that first spinning of the cotton that the word got out. There were 2 mills in Japan that were trying to make a ceremonial garment for the Emperor of Japan's coronation that was going to be in a few years. And why they needed green cotton, I don't know. So this is some sort of blip, but it did happen. And this mill, because they heard that I had machine spinnable colored cotton, came to me, ordered a small amount of my cotton. It was that order that allowed me to start the processes that created this entire industry. Because I was therefore able to begin translating the work I was doing on a small scale as a breeder to production scale agriculture, which is not a small matter at all. It began growing, my whole business, and I was able to quit my job as a scientist and do this work full time. But a very, very unfortunate series of events occurred. Suddenly, the World Bank, out of nowhere, decided to fund spinning mills with 0% down, 0% interest for 30 years in India, Indonesia, China, Pakistan. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, rules and regulations in the industrialized world were passed to prevent dyes and other textile chemical wastes and all chemical waste from going into waterways. This was the Clean Water Act. And those countries might have had environmental regulations in the books. But when you have a regulation, you have to have someone enforcing it. The thing is, if you can just dump the dye waste, and if the whole world is filled with manufacturers who are spending $2 plus a pound to clean up their dye waste, and you come on the market with a product that you didn't have to clean up the dye waste, you dumped it in a river, you don't have to buy equipment because you have 30 years. 30 years is a long time. And your government decides to give you the cotton for free because they decide this is our chance to take over the textile industry. All the big players switched to buying everything out of those countries. And that's why all the mills I sold to, and a whole lot of other mills, closed in 2 years. So in the US, 95% of our textile mills closed in 2 years, 95%. In Japan, 98% closed. In Europe, same thing, 90, 95. Everybody lost their businesses, everybody lost their mills. It was a horrible time. This only happened because of the greed of these big players in the apparel and textile world. Those guys started it. The people I sold to, Levi's, Lands, and all those guys, they held on to the US. They kept producing here until they just could not compete. And we are only hearing about fast fashion now, and that's only because the designers got dumped. But when it was the manufacturers that got dumped, no one heard about it. All you heard about was that you could get nice things for not even that much less money. They didn't lower the price, they amped up their profits. And the scenes that we see today were not part of the textile story. This free-for-all, money-grabbing, billionaire-making stuff is a new form of capitalism. There are these pockets of the world where capitalism isn't a dirty word. It's a mechanism of product development, which is how this product happened. It was by capitalism.
We play a large role in how life interacts with each other on this planet. And we can play a really powerfully positive role, or things can go way out of kilter. I feel hopeful, actually, in the younger generation. Everyone I meet that's young has it very clear that they're going to be part of helping the earth heal and be part of this positive force where human life is a positive and not a negative.